Welcome to the premiere edition of Live With, our 30-minute interview show. I'm your host, Dave Palumbo, and we're here with our first guest of the contest season, as you might call it here at Live With, Janae Marie Kroc. What a great story. How's it going, Janae?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Janae, we've talked before on Heavy Muscle Radio. The interview was with Matt Kroc at the time. You're no longer Matt Kroc. You have now, I guess we can call you a transgender woman. You're now Janae Marie Kroc. Explain to me what has transpired since that last interview in your life.
Okay, actually, mostly what's changed is just the general public's knowledge of the situation. Even when I did my first interview with you probably 5 years ago or so, I was already living my life in both genders at that point. I've been out to family and friends for about a decade, and I've been living, in both genders for almost as long. But I've been out at work for a couple of years now. I've been very out in the powerlifting community for probably 5 or 6 years. A lot of the elite level lifters are known for a long time, so it wasn't really a big secret. But then last Monday, a YouTube video outed me, completely to the general public. And to be honest, this was something I had planned on doing anyway, but I was trying to wait until my boys were out of high school because I didn't want to put them through that. So mostly it's just the public awareness, and so now everything's out there, and obviously it's kind of a crazy story. And for people that weren't aware, for somebody like me who was considered this, total alpha male, to come out as transgender, it's kind of a shocking thing.
A little bit about how the powerlifting community already knew, because what I guess you could say clues would you have told or revealed to them? Had you told them? Would you dress as a woman at meets? How would they have known already?
I wouldn't show up at meets or anything like that, but yeah, I was very open with my friends, and most of my close friends were other, top level powerlifters and my training partners. I had been out to everybody at Elite FTS, which I've been with for a long time, and Dave and Dave Tate there and Jim Wendler. They had known for a long time, and they were very supportive. And so it was just like a general knowledge within the mostly the elite circles initially. And it was one of those things. I wasn't out there spreading it, but if I was asked or rumors went around, and I was always honest about it, and all my friends, all my close friends, which was a big portion of the powerlifting community, all knew. So it wasn't something that I tried to keep secret, but it wasn't something I was promoting either. But it was something that was kind of an inside joke. We used to have a lot of fun with it, and I've got a very good sense of humor, and it's kind of a crazy story. So it was kind of always an inside joke among the top guys, and we all had a lot of fun with it.
When you say a joke, I'm sure they would, they tease you, oh, you're really a woman, and you'd be like, yeah. But at some level, some deeper level, was that hurtful because maybe people weren't taking you seriously at that point?
I guess, joke was incorrect terminology. It was something we kidded around about, but obviously it was no joke. This was something I've dealt with all my life and was very, very difficult for me. And at one point in my life, it even, drove me to consider suicide. So it was, it's nothing to really laugh about, but I just, we had a good sense of humor about it. But yeah, we would joke around, about, being outlifted by a girl and, stuff like that. But honestly, for, the type of community the powerlifting world is, everyone was really supportive and very accepting, and I never lost a single friend, and it was actually very surprising, and I was very thankful for that.
Point in your life when you say at some point you considered suicide, how old were you at that point?
At that point, that was when the marriage to my boy's mother ended. I had known as long as I can remember. I remember being 5, 6 years old and already having those feelings, but also already knowing that it wasn't really okay to talk about it. So I just buried everything down as deep down as far as I could, and tried as hard as I could to be the person that everyone expected me to be. And I was athletic, and I always liked girls, so that was enough for me in my mind to put myself in the quote unquote normal category. It's not really the proper way to think about it, but that's what I did back then. And I tried very hard, to not think about things and not dwell on it. But it was nearly impossible. To be honest, it was never out of my mind for more than 5 minutes any day, and weighed on me really heavily. But I was so terrified of what the reaction might be that I never told anyone until I was 23, and that first person was the boy's mother, and when we were dating. And she was supportive initially, but that didn't last very long. So then I just went back to suppressing it, and then I really started dealing with things about the time we were splitting up 10 years later when I was in my early 30s. And at that point, it was just, it was kind of overwhelming after all that time of suppressing everything and trying to figure everything out. And, my whole life I grew up feeling different and alone. And, you feel like a freak. You feel like something's wrong. That was before the internet, so I had no idea that there were other people out there like me that felt the same way I did. And so it was really hard. I felt broken. I felt unlovable. When I split from her, when I was at the worst period, I remember thinking, like, how is anyone ever going to love me? I felt like I was too complicated, and just that, no matter what I did, that it wasn't going to work. And I went through some rough times, and the thing was I wasn't telling anyone at that point yet, and so I was dealing with this all on my own, which made it even tougher.
Well, let me ask you this first of all. Did this issue break up your marriage, or was it something else?
We went through a lot of the same problems that most marriages did. At that point, we were together for 10 years. I'm not going to say it wasn't a factor, because it was something both of us knew and were aware of, but we really didn't deal with it. We didn't talk about it. When we were trying to work things out at the end, we did counseling for the last year of our marriage, trying to make things work, and I was trying to work on some things with her, and I asked her to work on this part with me, and it just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't something that she was willing to work on, and I don't blame her. But she knew from the start, and at that point, I really hadn't, figured everything out yet. So, but it was just one factor among many that, why our marriage didn't work.
I would have, in a million years, if someone would have told me that there's a powerlifter out there, a bodybuilder who, is really a woman and feels like a woman, I would probably never have guessed you. It went so far as, we were in Germany, Cologne, Germany, at the FIBO Expo this past year, and we shared a shuttle ride with you. I was with my wife and my CEO, and both of them females, were commenting how much they loved your sneakers, and you actually said, "Oh, they're girl sneakers," and it didn't even register in my brain that you were wearing girl sneakers because you felt like a girl. I just thought you liked the color of them, and you were way cooler than I was. That's how I interpreted it.
Well, that may be true too, but no. I've been doing little things like that for years. My toenails are always painted. I carry a bag that's pretty much a purse, but it's technically a men's satchel or whatever. But little bitty things to just help me feel balanced on a daily basis, especially when I was still hiding a lot, and but just little pieces of of me showing out, and and the funny thing is because I was such an alpha male, I could do all those things and no one thought anything of it, and except for the people that were close to me. But yeah, it was just a little way of trying to feel a little bit of balance in my life.
When you decided you were going to announce to the world and change your name and all this stuff, what changed for you? What do you do on a daily basis now that's different as a woman than you were doing like on your daily basis before you announced to the world, what's going on here?
Well, the thing is that I hadn't planned to announce it. I got outed, so this wasn't all, this wasn't really expected. Nothing much has changed because I was already living my life in both genders. But it definitely feels like a weight lifted, even though this wasn't planned. It is nice to be 100% out now. I'm still undecided about full transition or when that's going to happen. Like I said, I'm trying to hold off until my boys graduate high school. We'll see. School's out right now. It's summertime, and some of their friends and stuff have already found out about everything. And so far, the reactions have all been very positive. But we'll see when school starts back up and how this might affect them. I mean, this is something, we've known for years and we've talked about that it could happen because I have been very open about it. And they've known all their lives. I mean, they've known since I told them when they were 2, 4, and 6. I'm a big believer in honesty, and I didn't want to hide anything from them. So they've grown up with it, and they're very, they understand it very well. They get it. So, and they're very supportive. And all 3 of my boys have told me for years, to do whatever I need to do, and it, doesn't matter to them either way. I mean, we have an amazing bond. We're very, very close. But still, just it's 100% my decision to hold off on things because I don't want to put them through that. I mean, you can imagine, for the type of guy, Matt Kroc is, to come out as transgender, for them, I mean, they go from one extreme of their dad's the hero, like all the kids at school, thought I was the coolest person ever. And, oh my gosh, you've got the big strong dad that's the world champion. And, then to come out as transgender, the reactions aren't going to be quite the same. And we'll see. I mean, like I said, school's out right now. This just happened 9 days ago. So, we'll see how all this unfolds. And I'm sure they'll be fine. They're strong young men. And we've prepared for this for quite a while. We've known for years that this could possibly happen. But we were hoping to make it until they graduated high school. So for now, it's kind of take things a day at a time, see how things unfold. And see how things go for them. And I'm not going to deny this might change my feelings about transition since it's completely out there. And if it's well received and it doesn't seem to adversely affect them, this might be kind of a green light for me to go ahead with everything sooner. But we'll wait and see and take it a day at a time.
Now when you go to the gym, are you dressed like we see you now, or are you dressed as Matt Kroc used to be dressed?
No, I typically still, like I said, I'm living my life in both genders. So at the gym, it's still guy mode, and but I go everywhere else, however I feel. So like I said, work and shopping and anywhere else I need to go, all my daily errands or whatever I'm doing. I mean, I go in either gender, and I've been doing that for years. So it's not it's something I'm very comfortable with. But the gym is about the only place I don't. I a combination of things, but it's just easier to still go in guy mode. But once I, when I do make the decision to transition, I mean, of course, that'll change too.
You said that you were outed, and that's why you came out to the world, so to speak. How were you outed? What was said or done, and in what capacity?
There was a YouTube video posted by some guy. I gather he runs some type of, I think it looked like a gossip type log on YouTube, and he just basically showed both of my Instagram pages as Matt and Janae, and it quickly went viral, and within a couple of days he had over 100,000 views, articles popped up everywhere, and pretty much everything changed overnight. So it's been a crazy ride in the last 9 days since all this happened. So it went from just life as usual to all of a sudden my phone's blowing up with requests for interviews, articles are popping up all over the internet, everyone's talking about it. And like I said, I mean, this is something I planned on doing anyway. It just, I wasn't prepared to do it right now. But all in all, it's a good thing. I think, I have a really good chance to, put a positive message out there, and just me being visible, can help people like me. And I want to help educate people that don't understand, and, be a point of support for the people that are like me.
Now, you mentioned before that you the gender reassignment surgery, and that you weren't sure at first, and then you said, well, if after your kids graduated from high school that you'd go forward with it. Is this something that you want to do? And when we say gender reassignment, we think what does that entail? Because a lot of people don't know all the different nuances of it, because there's different levels of gender reassignment.
Procedures that transgender women will undergo, and it all kind of depends what you need. I mean, there's facial feminization surgery for those that have very masculine facial shapes, and Adam's apple reduction, breast augmentation. But I think the main surgery that everyone's referring to is the bottom surgery, SRS, or so basically where your genitalia are changed to that of a female. For me, if I'm going to go that route, I'm going to do everything 100%. And so if and when, I would go through everything, and it's it's not easy. It's a very involved procedure. The recovery is pretty rough, and but it actually yields very, very good results, and most of the women are very, very happy. I have no doubt that that I would be, very happy undergoing that and doing that. It's just a matter of more, am I ready to give up everything else in my life? There's nothing about transition that that I'm worried about, or I'm afraid that, oh my gosh, what if I regret this or regret that? There's nothing like that at all. It's all of that. I'm sure I'll be 100% happy with. The only things that that concern me at all is all the things I'll have to give up, the things I'll have to sacrifice. It's going to take time to get used to going from living as this masculine alpha male, to living as a woman full time. And it's a difficult process for me. It's honestly, it's more about how my family and my boys are going to do with this than it is for me. I mean, I know that it's just it's who I am. It's who I've always been. I mean, I have these aspects of my personality that are very competitive and very aggressive. And I refer to as my alpha male side. But the reality is, those things aren't gender specific. I've met very, very strong women and very weak men. In our society, we like to attribute all these strong qualities to men and not to women, and that's completely not accurate. So even though I refer to myself as an alpha male, I'm just a strong person and very disciplined and competitive, but those aren't exclusively male traits. And I'm sure I'll carry over those same aspects of my personality when I transition.
Now, when you undergo a surgery like that, obviously, and they remove your genitalia, obviously, and I'm assuming they would put you on estrogen, therapy. It might change, your aggressive nature. You're a guy who's squatted over 1,000 pounds. You've competed as a bodybuilder successfully. You have the competitive urge, as you mentioned before. I would assume, you're still a young man, that you would want, or a young woman now, that you would want to continue to compete. I mean, how would that affect that? I know you've been asked this question before. We're going to be talking about it on Iron Debate tomorrow night as well. How do you feel about competing as a woman once you've been fully transitioned?
Honestly, I will not compete as a woman after I transition. And the reason being is because I think it would be very controversial, and it's a no-win situation. Basically, I mean, I was the all-time world record holder as a male. So if I come over and, break all these women records and stuff like that, then it's going to be like, well, of course she did, and that's not fair, it's cheating. And I think it'll really stir up a bunch of controversy. And it could bring a lot of negative attention to transgender athletes, and that's the last thing I would ever want to do. And to be honest, I mean, whether I could break those records, I don't even know. After being on estrogen for a couple of years, any advantage you had as a male is gone. This has been studied extensively by both the Olympic Committee and the NCAA, and they found that after 2 years on estrogen replacement therapy, that any physical advantage that a male has is no longer present. So I mean, even if I wanted to, I may not be able to break any of those records. But to be honest, I'm really not interested in even competing as a woman. I mean, I've been competing for 20 years. I've accomplished almost all the goals that I wanted to, and I had a very fulfilling career. And I'm ready to move on to other things. That's not saying that I won't be competitive and won't want to compete in other things. I've recently gotten into mountain biking. I mean, I could totally see myself doing competitions there and racing, maybe even something like triathlons or something of that nature. But I have no desire to compete in powerlifting or strength sports.
Well, I can understand that also. You have nothing to prove even in the men's division, so what would you really have to prove in the women's division? What do you think about Fallon Fox? I don't know if you've followed her. She's an MMA fighter. They've been asking Ronda Rousey about her recently, and if she felt that it was fair that she's a transgender, and she's been knocking out a lot of the women in the division, and a lot of people think it's not fair because she was originally a man. What do you think about other athletes who compete, in the female, going from male to female, obviously?
Into because I am a competitor myself, and like I said, I've thought about competing possibly in other sports. But obviously, it's just something I've always been interested in, too. But yeah, it's like I just mentioned, it's been studied by the IOC and the NCAA. And transgender athletes really do not have an advantage. And if they did, you would see transgender athletes winning Olympic gold medals and becoming world champions and dominating these sports. And that's never happened. There's been some transgender athletes, transgender women that have, qualified for the Olympic teams, but to my knowledge, none of them have even medaled. There's been, even in sports like distance running, there's been some high-level transgender athletes, and the funny thing is they fared no better as women than they did as men. So what I'm saying is, if they were, say, in the 80th percentile for men, by the time they finish transitioning and have been on hormones for a couple of years, they find themselves in about the 80th percentile for women. So it's, all this controversy. I mean, on the surface, I can see where people would jump to the conclusion, oh my gosh, they used to be male, they had all that muscle mass and that testosterone. Some people like to say, well, males have naturally bigger frames, so they've got this physical advantage. But the reality of it is, it's just not true. The advantage that men have comes from male hormones. It comes from testosterone. And, when you take that away, then any advantage they have, given enough time, which they found is about 2 years, any advantage they had is no longer present. So any transgender woman that's competing has no advantage over the other women. And if you look at Fallon Fox, there are other women that in her weight class that she fights that are bigger, stronger, and have more muscle than she does. So, these claims that she has all these, prior advantages, they just don't hold up if you really analyze it.
I guess what you say holds true unless we talk about performance-enhancing drugs, and then that.
Well, right, then that changes the whole game, and of course anyone can be taking those. So
sure. Let me ask you about Caitlyn Jenner. She received the Courage Award at the ESPYs about a week or so ago, and a lot of people were outraged by it. They felt that she wasn't really a hero. That it should have been given to someone who overcame more adversity, from sickness, or I think one of the women had died, because she was trying to overcome cancer. Did you feel that it was a warranted award? Just before you answer the question, I feel that, if it wasn't for her, a lot of people like yourself wouldn't have had the courage necessarily to come out to the mainstream media. But that's my personal opinion. What was your feeling on that?
Whether or not she deserves the award, that's not really my place to say. I think I will say that what she did does require a certain level of courage, and it's not an easy thing, especially for someone that's in the spotlight the way she is. And regardless of all that, the important thing here is that she's bringing a lot of awareness, a lot of education about transgender issues, and making it easier for people like myself and other transgender athletes to come forward and be open and out about everything. And I mean, visibility is really one of the the biggest things and the best things we can do is just being visible and letting people know that it's not as unusual as people think. Already, I couldn't tell you how many messages I've received in the last week just since I've come out from people, thanking me, and especially people like me, people that are athletic and competitive and always consider themselves alpha males or jocks that are also transgender or gender fluid. It's just, there's just so many more of us out there than anyone knows, and it's because of the, current climate, which is improving, but still has a long ways to go. Most people are terrified to come out. I mean, there are very few things in the world about yourself that if you're honest about them will result in, your family kicking you out of their home, being fired from your place of employment, people to attack you on the street and try and kill and murder you for no other reason other than you're simply existing. So it's still something. We still have a long ways to go, and we're definitely going in the right direction. And Caitlyn coming out is a huge step in that. But it's still a very, very tough world for transgender people.
What percentage of the population would you say is transgender? Because I was trying to come up with this. I was talking about it with a few people the other day, and I'm like, I wonder how many people out there really are transgender. What do you think?
I've seen lots of different stats, but the honest thing is no one knows, because there are so many people that are afraid to be honest about it. And all I can say is that whatever statistics have been gathered, it's significantly more than whatever they've been able to obtain, because so many people are closeted. I mean, look at me. No one in the world would have ever thought for a minute. Even my own family was shocked. I thought for sure when I came out to my family, they were going to say that, oh, we noticed things and we always kind of wondered, or, there were little things here and there. But no, they were absolutely shocked. They had no idea. My closest friends, I got a quick funny little story. One of the first friends that I told, one of my close friends, my powerlifting buddy and my training partner, it took me 3 months to tell him of having partial conversations. And, I kept hinting at it and talking. It was just really, really difficult. Well, at one point, he said to me, well, as long as this doesn't involve you dressing up like a woman, then I'm fine. And later, we laughed about it so much. And the only reason he said that was he's like, that's the one thing I was sure that it wasn't. He's like, I had no idea what you were going to tell me, but he's like, that in my mind, that was the last thing it could possibly be. So, like I said, it's impossible to know how many people are out there. It's definitely more than, we think. But, what percentage of the population, it's still difficult to say. We'll probably know in another, few decades or hopefully sooner than that. But when we reach the point where people are, not afraid to be themselves anymore, then we'll really find out what the statistics are.
Let me ask you this question, because the Republican debate is coming up, I believe, tomorrow night. And this topic will certainly be asked of the candidates who are debating each other. What do you think? How do you think these candidates will chime in, especially from the Republican Party?
I mean, it's definitely becoming more accepted and more mainstream, and people are the understanding is growing and it's improving. But there's still a lot of people on the conservative side that don't understand, and there's still a lot of misinformation, very little education. I'm sure there'll be some people that have a very negative view of it, but overall, it's definitely changing in a positive direction. I mean, if you look at the younger generation, they really, really get it a lot more than, our parents' generation did. I mean, they had no understanding of it. And the thing is, it's been around all throughout history. I mean, that's one thing that's misinformed, that this is something new and this is something happening. I mean, you'll hear silly stuff like, oh, it's due to the chemicals in the food and all this kind of stuff. No, transgender people have existed throughout history. As far as, we have recorded history, there's evidence of transgender people being around. It's just, as far as, that party and their views, it's still going to take a little while, but it's definitely moving in the right direction.
Now, I have a question as far as, sexual preference, because, right, I mean, you made it known, obviously, you date women, you were married. Is that the sex that you prefer to be with?
To be honest, it's very complicated. I've always been attracted to women, and I don't find men attractive at all. But that being said, the things I prefer and the things I enjoy and the things that feel natural to me probably are not typical of heterosexual men. It was always very difficult. I didn't date hardly at all in high school. I didn't date at all hardly when I was in the Marines. The boy's mother was my first long-term relationship. I just didn't, I really didn't, even though I was attracted to women, I really didn't know how to be the quote-unquote man in the relationship, not in a intimate sense. I mean, I could do all the other things, but when it came to intimacy, I was always very uncomfortable. It was very awkward. Nothing felt natural. As far as that goes, I mean, that's one thing I have no doubt of. If and when I transition, having a female body, that will be finally the first time in my life that I'll be able to relax and enjoy intimacy without feeling awkward or like things are, to me, all my life it's really felt like play acting. I'm playing a role that I don't belong in. I'm not able to be myself, and I'm not in the body that everything would feel natural. It's really, honestly, it's been very, very difficult, and that's been one of my biggest struggles.
Now, having said that, I mean, if you do decide to go forward with the surgery and have the full surgery as you suggested, would that make you a lesbian? I don't even know how to even ask the question. I mean, since you would be a woman preferring women.
I think we put too much emphasis on labels, and there's definitely, I think sexuality and gender are more of a spectrum than it is like, different categories or different boxes. I think that's one thing that society does that's very harmful to a lot of people. We want to label things. We want to say, well, this person's this or this person's that. And the reality of it is it's much more complicated. And I like to say that in a world of black and white, I'm completely gray. And even though I'm attracted to women, I don't know that you could necessarily say that, I was a straight male or that I'm a lesbian as a woman. And then there's always the possibility that after I transition, my preferences may change. I mean, I won't deny that that's a possibility, and that does happen to some transgender women that were always attracted to women that find that their sexuality changes when they change, and sometimes that self-perception and difference in your body and other factors, it does happen, and I won't deny that that's a possibility. And to be honest, at this point in my life, I've let go of any preconceived ideas of what should be or shouldn't be, and I just focus on what is. And if I do transition and I find out that I start becoming attracted to men, I'll be totally okay with it. It might happen, might not. I don't know. And to be honest, it doesn't really concern me. I'll just, take everything a day at a time, and whatever happens, I'll do the best I can.
It's a terrific answer. My final question of the interview is, just because I'm wondering, where did you come up with the name Janae Marie? How did you decide what your female name would be?
That is the name. I actually get asked this a lot. That is the name that my mother would have named me had I been born female. So that's where that came from.
Is she told you that?
Yeah, it's one of those things. They'll talk about. Parents will talk about sometimes. You're sitting around at Easter or whatever, and you'd have been named this or you didn't have been named that. And I just remember when I was a child, I remember my mom saying it, and it always stuck in my head. And like I said, this has been something that I've dealt with my entire life. And anytime anything like that, where there was something about being a girl or whatever. And when I was growing up, I was mistaken for a girl several times actually. And back in the late '70s, with a little bit longer hair, and you're young, and people had a hard time telling sometimes. So all those experiences, they stuck in my mind. So when she said that when I was a child, it was something I always remembered. And so yeah, that's where that comes from. And yeah, had I been born female, that would have been my name.
Well, Janae, I want to thank you for being so candid with us and coming on and talking to the bodybuilding and fitness community and everyone else who's watching the show in such an open way. And I want to just wish you the best of luck over the next, couple months and years as far as, how you're going to transition and what's going to change in your life. And hopefully you'll continue to keep us updated. And the Kroc story never seems to get stale or lose interest. That's for sure. You're certainly an interesting person.
Yes, my life is never boring, that's for sure. Well, thanks so much for having me on and giving me this opportunity. And I'd love to come on again and update you when people want to hear what's going on.
Thanks a lot, Janae.
Thank you.
All right, that was Janae Marie Kroc, transition athlete, I guess you could say, person, and just a general terrific interview. I thought it was very honest and forthright, and I'm sure a lot of people out there who are watching this probably wish they could be as open and honest about their lives, because we all harbor something inside that we're just afraid to show the world. And she's basically opened up and shown us everything, and I got to respect that tremendously. Tomorrow night, Iron Debate with John Romano and Chris Aceto. We will be debating a topic that we just spoke about here today. Should male to female transition or gender reassignment, I guess you could say, athletes be able to compete in the opposite sport? Obviously, going from male sport to female sport being the pretty much what we're talking about. Because is it an advantage? That's the question. Some people say it's not. Janae would say it's not after being on estrogen so long. I don't know if everyone's going to necessarily have that same opinion. Stay tuned tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, live here on rxmuscle.com. For now, with our first and premiere episode of Live With, I want to say goodnight. Everything? Good. I think it was an interesting interview, at least. Oh, Janae, hey.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was such an honest, great interview. I think that